welcome to Cookie Pocket. This podcast is about film. Today we will be discussing West Side Story from 1961, choreographed and originally staged for theater by Jerome Robbins. And it follows two rival gangs, the Jets and the Sharks, who are, of course, shall we say, prejudiced against one another and constantly at each other's necks. And two members of each gang become infatuated with one another, and it tends to bring even more conflict out. And it's the plot structure is very much following that of Romeo and Juliet, in the sense that there are these two warring houses, and love may or may not bring them together. Then not really. Until unspeakable tragedy occurs. Yay. Okay. So we'll start this the same way we start everything else. General impressions. What did you guys think?
Zach can go first.
Okay, thank you for throwing me on the funeral pyre, Mitchell.
You're welcome.
So, I'll start off with my positives.
Nice.
I think this is a very, very well-made movie. It makes great use of a widescreen format. I like Robert Wise as a film director. I like some of his smaller movies more, particularly The Haunting, which he made, I think, right after this, which is one of my favorite ghost movies ever. And I think he does a great job here in his direction. I think this movie makes fantastic use of color and color association when it comes to the various gangs and the various characters. I think it's filmed very, very well in a way that's reminiscent of musical theater without taking away from the cinematic medium. But at the same time, my main critiques with this lie with the story and the performances, in that I think this is kind of overlong, and I think the performances are a bit overwrought, which are qualities that kind of come with musical theater, particularly my least favorite kinds of musical theater. Now, I don't hate musicals. What I am not as fond of are the golly gee, mister, I'm in love, can't you see type musicals. And this is definitely one of those. So I'm just kind of not keen on this from the ground up. I admire the production aspects of it hugely. I think it's a very well-made movie. But at 2.5 hours, it wore me a little thin. So I gave this a 3 out of 5.
Nice. Can Mitchell make this any better? The answer is no. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5. And I can stand musicals a lot better than people may assume that I can stand musicals. And I don't know. Gosh darn it, Christian. By golly.
It's okay. Just
I don't
let
even
it
know
out,
what I'm
guys.
saying anymore.
It's fine.
Yeah, I did not like this at all. I prefer Romeo and Juliet reading it. I prefer watching Romeo and Juliet reading it and reading it. And I prefer watching it, just watching it. And I would probably prefer reading this rather than watching it, because to me it felt literally just like a theater production that was filmed. It did not stand out as a film to me very much in comparison to other musical films, like one we will talk about later that I host. But I just a lot of the problem with the medium of film, and I'm about to blow Zach's mind because I'm sure he's never thought of this before, but I feel like
Proceed.
I feel like the dimension of film is so limited to trying to display multiple aspects of like the 3 dimensions of theater and how many different like aspects of it that you can pay attention to at one time. So everyone gets a different experience with it, right? And from all the side characters, like the minor things that they're doing while the main characters are doing things, all those things kind of play into your interest being, taken throughout the entire story. And I just feel like the intrigue is not as easily held onto, I guess. When things are so over dramatized, I feel like there's eventually a limit that's hit. When it comes to that, I feel like with theater, there's a lot more expressiveness that can be discerned from it. But I feel like watching it as a film, I feel like there's a lot more that needs to be happening for me to be invested besides just everything being highly exaggerated, as expected, like Zach had mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that was just a constant thing that really bothered me, and from a critical standpoint, not just from, it was irritating, but otherwise, no. I mean, I really like the performances, and I like the musical numbers a lot more than I thought I would. And just the actual choreography itself is like second to none. I really don't have any criticism for that. So I gave it a 3.5 out of 5, and I feel like it was an okay adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. I feel like the constant indications of tragedy coming are a lot more apparent in the Romeo and Juliet story versus this. I feel like it was very like one step backward, 5 steps forward. From a being depressed and then being happy standpoint, except towards the end, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't feel a sense of conflict. I felt like that the groups were very, I felt like that there was supposed to be like a dynamic conflict going on, like they have a lot more going on than we're led on to believe. But really, it didn't feel like it was that fleshed out, and I feel like the individual conflicts in Romeo and Juliet are way more easily fleshed out in writing and on a stage, in my opinion. And I don't want to compare it to Romeo and Juliet too much, because I feel like this was a really good adaptation in a lot of ways, bringing it to modern times and implementing those civil rights kind of aspects to it to appeal to teenagers of the 60s and things like that. But yeah, I thought it was really well done as a musical. I just felt like it kind of belongs on a stage more than on a screen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting. That's fair enough. You guys both gave it a 3 or better, so despite any negative comments, I see that as a win. I can live with that. I personally love this film quite a bit. I gave it the very first time I saw it, I gave it a 4, but I gave it a 4.5 like a day after my first view, and I gave it a 4.5 again after rewatching it before our discussion. And I think, like you guys said, a lot of it is to some extent personal preference, and I do think the performances are overwrought in places, but to me it works. The type of musical Zach does not like seems to appeal to me more. Shocker, yes. I know. And so generally, I guess from the outset, I was more prepared to enjoy this, but also just the music itself. I really, really, really love the music. I think it does kind of suffer from the first act being happier and having more of the iconic songs than the second act does, so that like once you see the first act, you're kind of like, oh, this is great, and then the second act is not as good, so it just inevitably feels disappointing. But outside from that, I don't have many criticisms. I think it's really well directed, and I can understand the inclination that this would fit better on stage, and as it was originally on stage. But I also think it's really visually interesting, particularly the scenes, the first time Maria and Tony see each other at the dance, and the subsequent number, I think is all very visually interesting. And the beginning of the film with the overhead shots of the city and the whistling and the snapping is obviously very iconic. So, those things tend to draw me in. And for those reasons, I really love this film, but I can understand why some other people may not. So with that being said, I wanted to ask you guys a little bit more about the choreography. We seem to all agree that it was impressive, but were there any songs in particular that stood out to you guys? What made it so impressive? And were there any drawbacks to the choreography in the musical?
I don't know if none of these songs really stuck with me. I kind of remember parodies of these songs more than I remember the actual songs.
Oh my goodness.
There are individual moments of the choreography that do stick with me. Not whole bits of the dance, but little bits and pieces here and there. I like specifically how fights are incorporated into the dance throughout, and how the dance is used to kind of symbolize aggression and emphasize kind of the exertion of the male form, and that it kind of emphasizes almost like the balletic quality in fighting, and like the inherent grace there. I thought that was really interesting. So I did like the rumble. The rumble isn't necessarily a dance, but it kind of is. I think it qualifies. I like the way that scene is shot. I like the lead up to it. I think that's maybe one of the most visually interesting portions of the movie, even if I maybe wasn't as invested as the movie wanted me to be. So there are things about the choreography that really appeal to me. And I'm not going to say that it's poorly choreographed, because it's definitely a very well staged production. It's just, due to my not being especially invested in the story, the dance didn't really hit me all that hard, beyond a few notes of, oh, that's kind of cool, which happened every now and then.
I would say the intro, I felt like it was a little bit long, but the intro is probably one of my favorite parts, and also the America sequence. I know it's Mitchell saying the America sequence. That not my favorite song. I have to think about which one's my favorite song, but I kind of got the one thing that bothered me specifically. I don't know why, but they kept reaching into the air, and I don't know why. Like, I felt like that was such like a repetitive thing, and I don't know why it bothered me so much. But but that doesn't that doesn't qualify as a criticism. I don't think that qualifies as a criticism, honestly. But I don't know. The parts like what I was saying about the dimensional thing. I feel like the more that there was dynamicity. Non-staticness. I don't know. Dynamic.
Kinetic energy.
Sure. I meant like the dynamic camera movements where it wasn't just, I'm going to go to the left of the room. Now I'm going to go to the right of the room. Now I'm going to go to the middle of the room. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to go back. I like the ones where they zoom all the way in, all the way out. They go up, they go down. So it feels a lot more full. And I feel like the America sequence really did a good job with that. And incorporating like the men and the women and stuff. I thought that was perfectly paced. That was a really well done part for me, and as well as were many other parts. The moments with Maria and Tony weren't as impactful as they were supposed to be.
No.
And I felt like they were a little bit too standard when it came to how I understand how slow it was supposed to be, but I felt like it was just a little bit too drawn out for me. But I think the sequences with the actual jets and sharks were also like the better sequences in my opinion.
Yeah, I want to agree with you on the Tony and Maria segments, Mitchell. I think those segments, there's visually interesting things happening in them, but I think the big drawback is that Tony and Maria just aren't very interesting. Tony in particular, I think, has the charisma of wet newspaper. So
come on.
I wasn't gripped by those scenes, even though there were really visually interesting things happening in them. It was like, I'm not going to say polishing a turd. It was like polishing a chicken nugget.
I have to agree with Zach, and it's harder. Like, falls into the same criticism I've already had. Trying to sort through Romeo's thoughts in writing is so much more interesting and intriguing than it is watching Tony just talk like a normal, like, being a part of this posse and being poor, and you don't expect him to have a lot of like complex ideas. And I'm not being like, it doesn't have to be like Inception or something, like, they have to like, for like 20 wall breaks, and I don't know, but I just, there's too much simplicity and too much emphasis on the emotion that wasn't totally there for me.
Seeing a character think about things, or reading a character thinking about things, is more interesting than seeing him blatantly say them to himself, I think.
Yeah, and be over impassioned by literally everything.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay,
well,
Christian, here's the torch.
Before I address that, I'm going to answer the original question, which was about choreography, if you guys remember.
I'm sorry.
I agree mostly with both you guys on. Somebody call the spin team, please. I don't have the energy for this.
Choreography, Christian. What was your favorite scene of choreography? Please.
I'm not sure. Maybe America. I'd have to think about it. But I do agree with Zach in terms of what he had to say about the ballet sequences. Because, I mean, especially for the 60s, you might think of ballet as a traditionally effeminate thing. But I don't think it ever came across as such when the gangs were incorporating it into their dances or fights or whatever. It all felt very natural and like a reflection of their energy, sort of as Zach mentioned earlier. So I wanted to agree with that. And I'm going to offer a partial defense of Tony and Maria. And since we're so keen on comparing it to Romeo and Juliet, I'll do just that. Romeo and Juliet are both basically children, and they're also both pretty dumb and have not known each other for a very long time. And the love that they share is, in my opinion, close to as one-dimensional as the love Tony and Maria are sharing in this musical. So from that perspective, I would argue that maybe Romeo and Juliet aren't all that they're built up to be on a one-dimensional reading of the text. But Zach, you have a response.
I was going to say, if I may, I think that Romeo and Juliet knows that its protagonists are stupid kids, and I don't think West Side Story does.
I agree.
That's my main response there.
I was pretty much thinking the same thing. And like I said, I mean, it's harder to express that. Like, if you're just watching two stupid... Yeah. I've never watched a Romeo and Juliet film. I've seen scenes of them. But watching stupid kids do stupid kid things is so much different when it's written by Shakespeare and... and actually portrayed on stage too. So, but I mean, maybe it's different in the 50s than 1590, whatever it is in Romeo and Juliet. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know when that play is set.
Maybe it is. Okay, next question. Stage versus screen. It seems both of you guys would prefer this in a more traditionally theatrical setting. So I'll ask, was there anything about the theatrical presentation that did work for you, and if you were to see it on stage, what differences would you like to see, and any comments you have really about the difference between presenting it as a film versus a live performance?
I think the colors and the close-up shots are something you can't replicate in person, and you guys mentioned the colors already. I think, the colors are different, but like the contrast on a screen is way more. There's a lot. It's more inviting in a lot of ways, and more, encapsulating of the environments they're in, I guess. And you get more of a sense of perspective where the setting is, versus kind of trying to convince yourself that that piece of cardboard is a skyscraper. But and I think those are the best points. I don't think it justifies it being a film, and as compared to a theatrical presentation. But I guess theater, the theatrical part would be way harder to pull off in terms of the settings changing so often, and I don't know. I guess the sense of scale would be hard to portray as well.
So unlike you, Mitchell, I am not entirely averse to this story being a film. I just think that we had a theater teacher, at least Christian and I, we had a theater teacher back in high school who routinely would explain how he hated the film version of Sweeney Todd because they shortened the songs and cut out stuff from the stage play. And I think this movie, West Side Story, is a good example of when you adapt a musical to film, sometimes it's a good idea to cut things out. Because I think there are things that would work perfectly fine in the stage version. Because stage, I think you're more willing to accept a longer runtime, whereas in film, you need to tighten those things up. There are things in this film, whole musical numbers, that I came out thinking, did we need that? I mean, as interestingly staged as Cool was, I really don't think it's necessary.
Not Cool.
I think it's stylistically interesting, but it adds nothing to the film at all.
Yeah.
Take that air out, like take that space out and tighten up your story. I love the style of this movie. I love the look. I love the feel. I think it does take those very theatrical lighting techniques and stylistic techniques and that very theatrical color and staging and just puts them in the bigger world of film. But the story it's telling is too big, and you could suck so much air out of this Ziploc bag and end up with a much tighter, more entertaining product. Christian, you don't seem very interested in the remake that's coming up of this film. I kind of am, because it looks like Steven Spielberg wants to make this into a movie instead of just a theatrical musical that happens to be on film.
I think
that's kind of interesting.
I hope half of them die.
I don't hope that, but
I hope they take out. I hope they call each other Shakespearean insults and stab each other. That'd be awesome. I will agree with all of Zach's major points, but I will partially disagree on the critique of Cool. Okay. I will give Christian this one. I will say that the point of Cool was to show the change of I'm sad now and now I'm going to go on murderous rampage and kill the sharks. That was the big kind of change of perspective, and I feel like that the musical number indicated that change of perspective for them. And also grounding themselves in the fact that they can't just go on a murderous rampage, and they have to keep it cool. So,
sure.
yeah.
I don't necessarily think that ends up having enough of an impact on the film to justify it, though.
maybe, yeah.
I definitely agree with Mitchell on the cool thing, and not just for the reasons Mitchell said, but also because their leader just died, and there needs to be some sort of transition of power amongst them, and so what's his face steps up, and and not only does that serve as like a reordering of power amongst the Jets, but it also punctuates a change of focus from we hate the Sharks to now we got to protect Tony because Tony had our back. So I do think there's quite a few reasons to justify that number, and also it's just a terrific number. But you know what? If I don't stop now, I never will. So,
No.
Next question. Principal cast members. In many cases, at least in my opinion, with musicals, the lead roles kind of make or break the whole thing. So I'm a little frightened to ask this question, but among our principals, namely, I guess, Tony, Maria, Anita, Riff, Bernardo, and really any other names that you can remember, were there any standouts, and were there any disappointing characters?
Anita's scene at the drugstore pharmacy place was probably the most emotional scene for me.
Yeah.
I'm not exaggerating. That was like the most emotional scene. And that was also like probably one of the most well acted scenes as well. Very standout for Anita. I felt like she actually had like a surprise character arc almost. And it was kind of interesting seeing her as kind of like the mentor, the ironic mentor, I guess, for Maria, and then kind of fleshing herself out towards the end. And I thought that was really effective. But I mean, I guess I felt there was a connection between Maria and Tony. I mean, I don't know. We kind of already discussed a little bit, but I mean, I understand Tony's impact. Like, he's really good at showing that he's over impassioned about everything, and I feel like it made perfect sense for him to stab Mr.
Bernardo?
Puerto Rican man. Yes.
Bernardo, yeah.
Bernardo, sorry. I was thinking like Mercutio and stuff, but anyway, I gotta stop bringing that up. And Maria was good. I feel like she wasn't amazing, I guess, but she did her part fine. I mean, her singing numbers were all right. She didn't really particularly stand out to me as amazing, at least compared to Anita's few moments.
So I'm kind of going to disagree with you, Christian. I think my personal impression of musicals is that often the side characters kind of make them for me, or the characters who are not the main leads. And in that regard, this film kind of succeeded, because although I was not interested at all in Tony or Maria, I did like kind of some of our smaller lead characters quite a bit. Riff, played by Russ Tamblyn, I primarily know him as an older actor because he was on Twin Peaks as Dr. Jacoby, and he's been in quite a few other things that I've enjoyed. But here, as a young man, he can really move. He's a great dancer. He's a talented gymnast. He's a really magnetic presence when he's on stage. I'm not a huge fan of his performance in this film, but that goes along with my being not a huge fan of this kind of musical theater direction. It's more of an overall umbrella issue than it is with him. I also, I don't know the name of the actor who plays Bernardo, but I think he has this sort of instant charisma about him and the way that he moves and his facial expressions, where he's kind of... slimy isn't the right word, but he moves in this very kind of reptilian, almost acidic way that's really visually interesting. But at the same time, you can see why like his friends like him, and he's charming when he's not in situations where he's trying to be threatening or imposing. So I found him rather a magnetic presence when he was on screen as well. So there were characters here and there that made scenes for me, even if the leads were not especially compelling to me.
Yeah, and you don't feel like you feel like Bernardo's definitely the leader, like 1000% every time he's on screen, and the minor interactions. I'm also partially a fan of the interactions. I remember when I saw Les Miserables and way back in middle school, at a dinner theater. I was so mesmerized. But I was like looking around and like they're like saying look down. I'm like, oh my god, I'm so intimidated right now. And it was very immersive. But yeah, I think the side characters, like the banter between them, you definitely feel like a good warm connection between the individual jets and sharks, and that's always appreciated. And that definitely kept my attention for a good bit of the sequences they were in.
Yeah, cool. I definitely hugely agree with Mitchell, especially about Anita's one scene. One of my biggest takeaways from his rewatch was how great Rita Moreno is. I really think she's the best actor probably of the bunch, and I would agree with Mitchell that that's the most emotionally affecting scene for me as well. I like Tony a lot. I think he has more charisma than cardboard or a polished. I like chicken nuggets, Zach. You know what? So
there's nothing wrong with chicken nuggets. I
like the ones shaped
also,
like the US.
Also, when you say I don't want to say this, and then you still say this, you're still saying this. So putting I don't want to say before the thing, it does not.
I don't recall saying that, but okay. I might have said it. I can't remember.
He's
what I said.
He's gonna hear it in the
time.
recording. I guess we'll find out.
I will.
You're
Yes.
gonna hear it in the recording. It's all on tape. Anyway.
Sure.
I think Tony is fun, and I think he's a good singer, and I see where he is, and I appreciate it, and yeah, I'm just a fan of his character, even though I agree that his and Maria's performances are overwrought, whether that is or is not called for. Okay, that's basically all I had. Are there any final thoughts from either of you two about why this is disappointing?
If you were a theater kid in high school, you will probably get something out of this movie. If you are a reformed theater kid or were never a theater kid in high school, I would recommend that you maybe read up on it beforehand, because it's quite possible it won't be your cup of tea.
My 99 theses are slowly developing here. I guess Christian's waiting my response so he can stop being destroyed emotionally. Okay. Straight face emoji. Haha. Okay. I agree with Zach's opinion on who the audience members are. There's a lot to appreciate in this, and there are fun things that happen, and if you like if you like the story in general and you're intrigued by the story, I think how this is described is exactly what it is. And if you're really into the overdramatic romanticism type of things, with a sudden bust of tragedy, then this film is definitely for you. So.
Okay, well, I'm ready to go to bed. I don't have much to say. I think this is a great film, and I think that pretty much anyone that likes any type of music should watch it. I can't believe, Zach, you were like, none of this music is memorable to me, and freaking Leonard Bernstein and Stephen Sondheim. You know, I'm sure
it doesn't stick in my head.
Yeah, the first act has like 10 times better music than the last act. The last act felt like we got to tie off all the plot ends. We got to start ending this now. Let's start inserting some numbers and parts where they make sense.
I'm not saying it's bad, because, as I've said many times in Season 1, I am not a music man. I'm just saying, to me personally, I did not find this music especially memorable. It didn't stay with me afterward.
All right, Zach. Well, you can have your Rob
I've seen
Zombie,
enough Family Guy.
And I'll have my Leonard Bernstein, and we'll all be
Sure
happy.
thing.
I'm done.
What was the Family Guy sequence with this in it? Right when I heard that, I immediately thought of it.
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. Every song in this, by the way, I've heard before at least like twice. So I was familiar with all of the songs.
Yeah, they're pretty iconic. Okay, is this over yet? Can this be over now?
Christian, don't be so depressed. Come on.
I'm fine. What's the next segment? I don't know anymore.
We obliterated Suspiria. Come on. We can review. Let's go.
Yay.
Somebody else go.
Well, I guess I'll start because our host is in a coma. I finished Broadchurch a little while ago, but I told you guys I'd update you, so here I am giving my final thoughts on Broadchurch. It's a quality piece of British television. All 3 series are very, very good. And even though there's 3 separate series, it's essentially all one prolonged story, where the first series is kind of the first act, and then the second is the second, and the third is the third act. And it's got some great performances throughout, particularly from, David Tennant's great in everything, but I think he's really good in this in particular, because you really see kind of an evolution of his character, and him becoming kind of ingrained in the culture of this small town that he's been placed in. Another similarity to Twin Peaks, which tonally they're nothing alike, but they do have a lot of structural similarities of the detective coming into the small town and becoming part of the culture there, and it's a great watch if you enjoy dramas, if you enjoy police procedurals, maybe if you enjoy crime investigation shows. It's much more of a drama than it is a CSI show, but I think there is definitely compelling mystery throughout all 3 series, and some serious dramatic gut punches. If you're someone who likes binge-worthy entertainment, I think you'll totally get a kick out of this, because there's only 8 episodes a series, and they're pretty quick to watch through. You could get through the whole thing in maybe like 2 days, if you were really invested in it. So it's a solid recommendation from me for all 3 series of Broadchurch.
I'll go. I was going to Grand Slam Saving Private Ryan, but I did not watch Saving Private Ryan, so I will not do that now. I will now talk about Ex Machina. I saw about 5 days ago.
Oh.
I gave it a 4.5 out of 5, and I really liked it a lot. And Oscar Isaac is, you should stay there. You should stay in that movie.
In the one dancing scene, too.
In the middle of the dancing scene, which was a natural dancing scene, and he did not put his hands up in the air very often.
No.
But it's a really great. I did not feel like it was the kind of Frankenstein thing that it could have been.
Yeah.
It definitely took a lot of the general themes of it, but there was so much sci-fi immersion and so much complexity in the dialogue that was it's very original, and the story itself was that the actual progression of events, I should say, is very original. And I just overall really enjoyed it. I was totally that was a tense place in the middle of the woods for all of that to happen, and with so few actors and actresses, and for them to portray it so well. I mean, it almost felt like Alien for a few frames, practically.
Yeah.
But it was just it was so much more slower and dramatic, and a lot of very intentional framing. I think Zach, you might have mentioned that in your review.
Mm-hmm.
So everything felt very deliberate and controlled. And overall, I mean, the performance was really good. Definitely Oscar worthy, and I think actually got Oscars.
I think
I don't know who got what, but
Yeah.
But yeah, I really really liked it. I recommend it to anybody who's into the the original kind of Prometheus time for story. Gosh, and and are intrigued by this at all, because I think it was it really blew my mind, honestly, and very philosophical. So if you're into philosophy, it's also a very big part of it.
I really want to second that recommendation. I think one of the big triumphs of Ex Machina is that the story feels so human in spite of its very artificial subject matter, but the filmmaking feels so deliberate and constricted that you kind of, as a viewer, feel really trapped with the characters in that situation. It's really effectively made, like Mitchell was saying, so definitely a double recommend from Cookie Pocket.
And I'm Domhnall Gleeson, by the way. That's me.
Yes.
It's in the watch list. Someday I'll see it.
Alicia Vikander,
okay.
or whatever her name is. Yeah. I'm done.
Yes. I finally watched the Seinfeld finale. It was pretty disappointing. But
I didn't know you hadn't seen it yet, but okay.
No, I had watched every episode except that, and then I was saving it, and then it was weird. But I'm still gonna offer the show some accolades. It really is. I think it's got this reputation of being basic or unintelligent, but I think that's false. I think a lot of people malign it because sort of like the Beatles, I guess. Like once they did the thing, everyone else started doing the thing, so it became less special to people who saw other people doing the thing after
First.
Seinfeld did. But
Yeah.
But much of the writing is really, really clever, and the way that it is a show about nothing, but despite that, really quite entertaining with distinct and engaging characters. I really think it's a show for everyone, and nice if you're ever looking for something to watch in the background when you're like, I don't know, doing something else. It's on. I think it's on Hulu right now, and yeah, I recommend it. It's good fun. Okay, and then it was time for the rundown.
Oh, nothing for the Magical Cinema Tour this week, Christian.
Zach, I want you to guess how much energy I have right now.
The Magical Cinema Tour has not come to take Christian away anymore.
Yes.
Is leaving.
Yes. Yes.
Just
Just like Magic.
has slept past the bus ticket.
Yes, just like Magical Mystery Tour is the weakest Beatles album, Magical Cinema Tour is perhaps the weakest Cookie. Anyway,
you can't say that while Yellow Submarine exists. You can't.
Okay, fair enough. The rundown today is really good, and Mitchell really did great with writing much of it. Again, Mitchell, I'm going to start this one. Are you ready?
I don't know how I feel about you starting it, but I guess I'll let you have this power grab.
Okay, thanks.
I forgot to do the Okay, go.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Snapping.
3 out of 5.
The number of bubbles in this here soda pop.
4 out of 5.
Jets.
3 out of 5.
Sharks.
4 out of 5.
Rita Moreno as Anita.
3 out of 5.
It hoits.
2 out of 5.
To never stop saying Maria.
3 out of 5.
Dancing our feelings instead of directly expressing them.
3 out of 5.
War councils.
2 out of 5.
America.
2 out of 5.
Rumbles.
3 out of 5.
Psychologically disturbed.
2 out of 5.
Staying coolly cool, boy.
2 out of 5.
Call me grandpa.
3 out of 5.
Calling for Chino.
3 out of 5.
Very realistic knife fight.
3 out of 5.
Intermission.
2 out of 5.
Zach Garrigus is man and wife beater at the windows.
3 out of 5.
Love transcending everything.
2 out of 5.
Giga Chad Doc.
3 out of 5.
Gigabrain Anita, 1 second.
2 out of 5.
Killing with hate instead of guns. Oh,
Oh.
depressing. I was just saying.
Okay, we're done. Somebody do the preview. I want to go to bed.
Wow,
Zach.
Okay, this is the first Cookie Pocket episode to ever be hosted by a man who is asleep.
Let the audience determine that, Zach. Okay,
Yes,
we
yes,
have
I
to
will.
keep the marketing up here.
I'm being unfair to the audience. Okay, so I'm going to be hosting next time. And funnily enough, I didn't plan this, but last
Funny
time we
enough.
talked about a Terry Gilliam film. And next time, we're going to be talking about a Terry Gilliam film. We're going to be talking about The Man Who Killed Don Quixote from, I think it came out in 2017, though it might have been 2015. It has a very, very complicated release history. He was trying to get it made for like 27 years until it finally came out. It's got a lot of big names. It's got Adam Driver, Jonathan Pryce, John Hurt shows up in there somewhere. A really big cast by a pretty well-known director. So I'm intrigued to see what we think of it, because it doesn't have a great reputation despite kind of all the positives attached to it. But if you're interested in seeing us talk about The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, then tune in next time to Cookie Pocket. This podcast is about film.
Yes, it is. That's all for us today. Maybe this is just my new disposition on the pod moving forward.
Oh,
Who knows?
no.
Christian has a very easy thing he can say to say goodbye right now. It's so easy, it's not even funny. Come on.
What
He
is
doesn't
it?
even know. He doesn't even know. What were you... Find anything else? Are we good?
Goodbye, you filthy animals.
Buenas noches.
Oh, dang it.